Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so excited today because of the topic that I want to be talking about. Is it a topic? No, it's a question. The question, one of the most frequent asked question, one of the most frequently asked questions. That is the one that I want to talk about today in this video. My name is Nerissa. I am a mom to 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. My firstborn is 14 years of age and is a boy. My secondborn is 12 years of age and is a boy. My thirdborn is 10 years of age and she is a girl. The reason why I come here and talk and engage, it's because my second-born son, who is 12, is on the autism spectrum. His diagnosis barrier includes autism, ADHD, Tourette's syndrome, learning difficulties, acute anxiety. That is what he's living with. And as the mother, my job is to be the primary caregiver. And you know, when you want to be able to support your loved one who will be living with a condition, a lifelong condition, you want to be equipped with information. You want to pay attention to what is happening out there and see what tools you can make use of to support your loved one. And just like any mother, just like any caregiver, that is what I do for my son. And I also come here and share my personal experiences as the mother and primary caregiver. I also come and share my experiences and also just to get support from other people, because this community has really supported me. We knew about my son's condition. He was officially diagnosed when he was around 2 to 3 years of age. That's when he got his official diagnosis of autism. And since then, we have received so much support. We have received so much learning, so much knowledge, so much information on how best to support our child. Now, today, I want to address, or I want to talk about the most frequently asked question. The most frequently asked question that I've seen online, that I've seen even amongst the people that I meet in person. This is one of the most frequently asked questions for the past 10 years that I've had to live in the awareness of my son's condition. And this question is, why didn't we see a lot of autism cases back then? Why didn't we see a lot of autism cases back then? This question gets asked. I think I come across this question almost every week, if not even every day. Yeah, I do come across this question, either in person or online. And I've realized I really appreciate that this question is really coming from a place of wanting to understand. This question is coming from a place of really wanting answers. And this is my opportunity also to share what I have learned in the past 10 years of raising my son, what I've learned from the platforms that I've gotten some knowledge, and also from my own reading. Because as a primary caregiver, my job is also to do some research about this condition. My job is also to read, to find, to also even study my own child. I always encourage my fellow special needs parent to say, study your child as if you are pursuing a degree. Study your child as if you are studying towards your PhD. Because the more you study your child, the more you are going to be in a better position to support him. The more you are going to be in a better position to support her. Because you're going to understand their patterns of behavior. You are going to understand why they do what they do. So in that studying also, anything that is autism, it interests me. It sparks my interest. I am in so many support groups. One of them, I'm the founder of that support group, and some of them I've joined also to learn. For me, it's just about learning, because with information, I become equipped. With information, I get direction. With information, it helps me, it empowers me to support my son. And now let's get into this question. Why didn't we see a lot of autism cases back then? What do you think? This is what I found out. The diagnosis is the one that didn't exist back then a lot. But that does not mean there was no autism. A very good example is that before 1940s, there was no autism diagnosis, because the very first case of official autism diagnosis was made in 1944. That's when the first official autism diagnosis was made. That means people have been researching about it. People have been talking about it. And that means it has always been there. And as you continue watching this video, we're going to talk even about some examples of people who are now in their 80s. Some of them are in their 90s. We're talking of people who are now 80 years old who are autistic. So that back then, how far are we talking about when we say back then there were no autism cases? I've also come across somebody who said before COVID pandemic, there was no autism. My son is 12. And when we talk about the pandemic, by the time the COVID pandemic hit us, my son was 7 years old. I hope that answers you. He was already 7 years old, and he had already received his diagnosis. He was already getting support. He was already on the medication that he was taking to help him by the time we got into the COVID pandemic. So I'm just sharing this so that people have an idea that, yes, we're also going to discuss why we have so many cases now. Not really so many cases, but why it looks like the information about autism is just too much now. First of all, autism was diagnosed. The first official autism diagnosis was made in 1944. That means we have always had autism. Number two that I want to discuss about is that the criteria that was being used back then, it was extremely narrow. It was very narrow. Only very obvious and severe cases were being labeled as autistic. Those children who were weird, extreme cases, maybe of challenging behaviors, disturbing wherever they are, those who were really drawing attention are the ones who were labeled autistic back then in the 40s. But now with time, we have even learned that autism is presenting itself in a very varied ways. I will give an example. I have a group that I belong to. It has got more than 1,200 moms and caregivers. And in that group, 1,200 moms of children with autism, there is no one child whose autism presents similarly, because it presents itself differently from one person to another. But back then, when they were giving the diagnosis, the professionals also, they were using very narrow. So you can imagine if everyone right now who is in this particular group that I'm referring to, if everyone there was using only their child's case as the yardstick to measure autism, maybe even my child would have not been categorized as autistic. Then there's another group that I belong to, the other of the support groups that I belong to. The one that has got list numbers is he has got about 68 members. The other one has got 644. The other one has got I think about 400. It's different groups, and I joined them. One of them is me who started it. Then the other ones I joined to get the support. 3 of those groups is filled with people of my color who speak my language, based from my home country, Zimbabwe. Then the other group is based, it has got, I can say, we are just 3 people in that group of my color, in the group that has got 1,200 people. And in this particular group, there is more than 50 parents who their children are now adults, who were born in their 70s. And some of them, they received their diagnosis recently. Their children received the diagnosis after tertiary education in the workplace. They are already working. Some of them are not working at all. Some of them are still struggling to find their way. But what I'm trying, the reason why I'm using this case study of these different groups is for us to see that there are already people, adults, and some of them, I always say some of them, we are even working with them and we don't know that they are autistic. Remember, autism, just like any diagnosis, a person has a right to disclose it or not. They can choose not to tell you that they are autistic. But then, you not knowing that they are autistic, will it mean that they are not? I gave an example in my response to the other post where I said the absence of a light in the dark room does not mean that that room does not have furniture. So if you go into a room, a well-furnished room, and there's all the kind of furniture that is supposed to be in that room, and the lights are switched off, you are not going to see the chairs, you are not going to see the tables, you are not going to see the couch, you are not going to see the counters that are in that room. If it's a bedroom, you're not going to see the closet, you're not going to see the lampshades, you're not going to see the bed, you're not going to see the dresser. So can we now say the absence of the light is the absence of the furniture? I'm using this example so that we realize that information is light. It is the light that makes us see what is surrounding us. And I am saying this to say, it's because now we are more informed. So it looks like we are surrounded with too much autism cases. But it's not like that. We have always had autism cases. I want you to think when you were in high school. I was born in the 1980s. I'm in my 40s now. Back then, we went to school with we had these classmates who were just behaving just like my son. Some of them. We went to school, even in primary school, we knew that this person is different, but we just didn't know why they were different. And we used it to call them names according to their behavior. Some of them were very brilliant, but they were very awkward socially. To the extent that everyone knew in the school that this one is very awkward. And we just accepted them like that. We didn't know. And they also didn't know. So that means if a person was my classmate and I'm in my 40s, that means that person is 40 right now. It's in their 40s. And where are they? So can we say there were no autism cases? I even remember some of the teachers that also were presenting with autistic traits and symptoms. They probably were aware. They probably were not aware. But what I can tell you is that we were not aware. I even remember some of the villagers where I grew up, where I come from. There are some of the people that we just knew in society. We just grew up knowing that this so-and-so, in their 40s, we would even call them by their first names. And we would know in our tender years, before I was even 10, we knew this particular individual is different from other adults that we see around. So can we say there was no autism back then? And also the other factor is the reason why we think we didn't have cases, so many cases back then, is that in general, girls and children of color were overlooked even in the Western countries. So whatever they would say, they would not be heard. They would just be told. I again gave an example of what we do with girls. I have two boys and one girl. It's only now we are learning that boys should be also taught the same chores that we are teaching our girls in the house. We should teach. I've learned that I must teach my boys to also do dishes, to sweep the floor, to cook. But as we were growing up, those chores were mainly meant for girls. And girls were groomed in a way that they must work hard and they must endure hardships. They must not just cry. They must swallow their anxieties. We were groomed to tolerate, to endure uncomfortable circumstances. By doing that, we were already grooming girls to mask autism. I did a video about autistic masking. So when you are teaching a child to suppress how they feel, you are already, if they are autistic, you are already training them to mask how they feel. Maybe you are not asking them to mask their autism. Back then, autistic kids existed. They were labeled as shy. Leave him, he's very shy. And some would even be punished for being shy. This one is problematic. And some were being punished for being problematic. Looking back, I think those were autistic meltdowns, actually. Some were labeled slow learners. Maybe, just maybe, they had learning difficulties associated with autism. Some were labeled hyperactive. They were all over the place. Some were labeled daydreamers, always mumbling and having that echolalia. We had some peers as we were growing up who would repeat words what teachers would have said. And teachers would think that is mockery. Teachers would think that those students are teasing them, and they would get punished for that. We had peers as we were growing up who were labeled as emotionally disturbed, who would just cry from nowhere. So many autistic traits, I can give examples from back then, as far as I can remember my childhood. And we have so many autistic adults right now in the society, some of them very successful, some of them comedians. Let's talk about Dan Aykroyd. I hope I'm not butchering his name. Dan Aykroyd is 73 years old. He's an actor and a comedian. This is just one example of so many autistic adults who are in their 70s. He's 73 years old. So if we say back then there were no autism cases, what are we trying to say? Let's talk about, say, Anthony Hopkins, who is 87 years old, an actor. He's 87 years old now. So if we say back then, which back, how far back are we referring to? Let's also talk about Susan Boyle. She's 64 years old, a very successful musician. I've just given these 3 examples of people who are older than me, who are autistic. So if we say back then there were no autism cases, I just want clarity in that question. How far back then are we referring to? Maybe we might need to rethink again. It's just the light in the room that have risen. When my son was diagnosed, that is like about 10 years ago, even on Facebook, there was not so many people talking about autism. Before that, actually, I have always said in my previous videos, I had never came across a post that was talking about autism before my son's diagnosis. What I understand is that maybe algorithm knew that I was not interested, because to tell you the truth, I was not interested and I was not looking for autism information. But from the time my son got diagnosis, I started looking for information everywhere. I was living in Cape Town and I never knew there were organizations in Cape Town, South Africa, that were focused on autism. I started looking for them. And to really think that some of those organizations' offices were even in my neighborhood. And one of the autistic specialist schools was less than a kilometer, less than a mile from my house. And I did not even know the purpose of that school. I just knew that it's a special needs school. I did not know that it's a specialist school for autistic learners. So sometimes information looks like it's not there because we're not looking for it. Sometimes information will not pop in our faces. We have to look for it ourselves. And what I've learned over the years, over these past 10 years, is that autistic people didn't just start appearing. They were born before we knew about autism. It's us who didn't have the knowledge. Autism has always been there. The reason why now it's always in our faces, you probably have opened one of the videos and algorithm is now pushing that content towards you. Number one. Number two, you have engaged in those conversations and and in these days, if you have been thinking about something, that content will also be pushed your way. I'm sure we know about that, right? If you have been thinking about weight management videos are going to be pushed your way. So it looks like now information is too much in your face. No, it has always been there. Only now I'm realizing that there's this family that I follow. They've got children, about 3 children, all autistic. The oldest is even 25. And when I look at that page, it has been there. Even now, as I was saying, 10 years ago, I never knew anyone on Facebook. It's me who never knew. But there've always been people talking about autism. There's another lady, a mom who inspires me. She has got a daughter who is 22 years old. She has always been on Facebook, even before my son's diagnosis. But I never came across that page. If you go to YouTube, there is a lot of autism related content that was always been posted way before you heard about autism. So what I'm trying to say is autism has always been there. What we didn't have maybe was interest and algorithm. Algorithm was not pushing that content our way. And also for majority of us, especially people of my color, they show interest in things that matter to them. I, for one, was never interested in autism information until I found myself being a mother to an autistic child. And because of that, I have now developed interest and passion and this advocacy spirit because I'm in that shoes. In all those support groups that I spoke about earlier, I have not seen anyone who says, I'm just here to learn about autism. I don't have a child on the autism spectrum. I'm just interested in this subject. I've not seen anyone. Unless maybe they are studying so they want to benefit from that. But everyone that I've seen who is actively involved with autism issues, they are in those shoes. Circumstances or situation, diagnosis has forced them to develop interest in this subject. Just like, I want to give another example. You know, when we were growing up, I am left-handed. My grade 1 teacher back then I was in grade 1 before the 90s. And my grade 1 teacher did not want me to write using left hand. I remember from grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 until grade 4, I was forced to write with my right hand. Only in grade 4, that's when we got a different teacher who didn't mind. Up to now, I write with both my hands. Society has now stopped forcing people to use their right hand. But back then, it was a taboo to be seen writing with your left hand. So can we say there were no left-handed people back then? We have always had autism cases. What we did not have was the society that have learned how to see autistic people, understand autistic people, and support autistic people. We grew up in societies where people would shy away from neurodevelopmental conditions. We grew up in a society, back then, autistic individuals have always been there, but they were being hidden because they were embarrassing. That's why up to today, There is still this stigma in the air. That's why people like me, when we got diagnosis, we cried as if we'd received a death sentence for my child. It's because of the stigma that is associated with these conditions. And that statement to say, why didn't we see a lot of autism cases back then? It also carries this aura of stigma as well. It's like there should be something that parents are doing that is wrong, that is making autism cases rampant as they are. But I want to give you assurance that we have always had cases of autism back then. So in conclusion, I want to say autism isn't on the rise. Autism information is what is on the rise. We have now a generation that is informed. And I want to celebrate you for being part of that generation. I want to celebrate you for always having questions about autism, because that means you are a curious individual and you want to be informed. And I want you to keep looking for information. One day, you might find this information useful in your workplace, because we have autistic individuals who are now in the workplace. So you having information that will go a long way to help you how to understand them, how to see them, and how to support them, and how to accommodate them. So autism cases are not on the rise. It's the awareness that is on the rise. It's the acceptance. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. What do you think? Didn't we have autism cases back then? What do you think is increased? Is it autism cases? It's because now even professionals are more experienced. They know. The diagnostic tools are now also very varied. Professionals are now learning that this is a spectrum. It's not one size fits all. Back then, maybe they would diagnose one person per year. These days, they can be diagnosing people every time. That does not mean the cases are becoming more and more. That means we are becoming more and more aware. Parents are becoming more and more aware to their children's milestones. And also back then, remember those non-verbal individuals that used to elope? Remember those non-verbal individuals that we just thought the problem is they don't have speech? Remember all those autistic signs that we are ignoring. And the fact that a person is coping and is living with us does not mean they are not having internal struggles. Again, in closing, I want to say autism is a neurodevelopmental condition. It's the way the brain is wired. It's the way they understand the world around them and the way they respond. Autism has always been there since time immemorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be looking forward to getting your feedback in the comment section. Have a great day. Bye.